All right, hello everyone, and welcome to AI and Accessibility, a chat with the industry leaders we have here. I am Manish Agarwal. I am the co-founder of IAccessible, which is a social enterprise that I set up, and I'm delighted to have you here for this event. I'll be the host for you. Um, Here's the plan. I will start with introducing iAccessible. Then I will have our distinguished panel speakers introduce themselves. We will have a fireside chat for about 30 to 45 minutes. Uh, we will have time for questions at the end, but if you have something, it's just a chat. So if you have something that you think would, you know, benefit from being addressed in the moment, please feel free to raise your hand. Only if you want me to completely ignore you, because I'm blind, I will not see you. So if you want really to grab my attention, you can just say I have a question, or you can clap. Um, so after the fireside chat, we'll have about 45 minutes for networking and getting to know our peers in the accessibility space. Uh, don't be shy and talk to me. A lot of people don't come to me because I don't make eye contact. I don't because I'm blind. People tell me I'm snobbish because I don't smile back at them. I just don't know they're smiling. So, uh, with that, let me start with the introduction. So, iAccessible is a disability-owned social enterprise that I set up on the premise of nothing about us without us. In my years of driving accessibility in large organizations like Microsoft and other enterprises, I realized that if product makers really wanted to make truly inclusive and equitable products, they needed to get inputs from people who have lived experience of disabilities. And so I set up iAccessible. Everyone on our team has lived experience of some disability. They are expert users of assistive tools that they use for their day-to-day living. On top of that, they're all certified in industry, certifications on accessibility. So everybody's trusted as a certified. With this team, we are able to offer a comprehensive set of accessibility services, including accessibility testing, design reviews, user research, and training. We have partners like Adobe, SAP, Microsoft, the Compass Group, who believe, in our services and have given us the opportunity. Adobe has this to say on their official blog about iAccessible, and I quote, iAccessible is a beacon in our quest for building truly inclusive technology. So with that, I'll start to have our guests introduce themselves. Saqib, you want to go first?
Hi, thank you. I'm Saqib Shaikh. I lead the Seeing AI team here at Microsoft, where we are looking at how do you leverage the latest emerging technologies like artificial intelligence to help the disabled community. And in particular, the Seeing AI mobile app is an app which can describe someone's surroundings for someone who's blind. It can read, describe your photos, help you navigate, and much more. So, yeah, that's a bit about my team and what I do.
Cool. Rob, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. So I'm Rob Sinclair. I'm the head of accessibility at Atlassian, maker of project management software. So the mission there is to build an accessibility program so that we make our products fully accessible to everyone and really live up to the company's mission around unleashing the potential of teams. I think we'd all agree we can't do that unless we unleash the potential of each person there. So so started there about 2 years ago. building on kind of trying to learn what we learned here at Microsoft. I spent about 20 years helping to build the program here, so a lot of good lessons learned. It's a little fun to be back at square one, and super thrilled to kind of see where Microsoft continues to go. I think I have to say the teams here continue to really set the bar for the industry, which is super exciting for all of us, and it actually helps push the whole industry. So good job to the Microsoft teams like Saqib's here.
Cool. Jennifer?
Yeah, and I'm Jen Smith. Currently, I work at Visa. I also have a common thread through Microsoft, which I was here before I was at Visa. I've also worked in the government industry, so small government, like a state government, worked at the CDC, and I've been doing accessibility for close to 20 years as a designer, as a front-end developer, and compliance, doing all kinds of things. Right now, my day-to-day work is our accessibility team is in the design program at Visa, even though we serve all of Visa as a company. And I work with our top strategic products to make things accessible for our clients, whether it's B2B customers or our end users and our employees. So making sure that we can empower payments to be accessible.
Sure. So why don't we continue with you, Jen, and tell me more about what you just started telling, like what are some of your accessibility challenges here at Visa, and what are you trying to do?
Yeah, and what we're trying to do, because like we have the luxury, but also an interesting space because we're regulated. You know, we can't play fast and loose with people's money or their privacy or data. So we have decades of experience, and know that I'm not a spokesperson for like the company and their AI strategy. So I'm just speaking personally as to what we're doing as a team. But what we're trying to do is take the decades of experience of what Visa's been doing securely and managing privately to learn in this new generative AI space what works well, what doesn't work well. They have a long history of training people, giving us safe spaces to experiment with AI and learn the limits of this and how we use this as a tool where we aren't living in what the headlines are talking about all today, where it's all good and it's going to save us all, or it's evil and it's going to destroy the world. There is a middle ground here, and how do we navigate this as a tool to improve like how we work and mature our practices and deliver again for our clients on the end. But I think in the accessibility space, it is unique because people aren't binary. The people that we're serving have unique needs that have not been always trained, and there's a lot of biases that we know in these machine learning and large language models. So how do we understand the limits? What are the hallucinations that we might be seeing right now? So experimenting with that in a safe space so we can really mature our processes but still have discernment and use these AI tools for what they do best and our humans for what they do best to level up our program. So we're right now experimenting to see like what can we put in place to mature our program and use our people for where they're best and not repeat the same things over and over with busy work. So we're kind of, that's kind of in a nutshell what we're doing a little bit.
Okay, yeah. Saqib, what are you currently building these days?
So, Seeing AI has been developed as a visual companion for every part of your life. And I think of it as a conversation with the blind community and the scientists at Microsoft and academia. So we're like looking at what's the latest technology we can apply to solve the problems that people have in their everyday lives, whether that is reading something or accessing appliances or getting around or so many different aspects. And that's how the Seeing AI app really came about, is through those conversations, through building this solution which you just hold up your phone and it will help you depending on the task at hand. And so like, that's been going for some years now, that program, but the latest boom in generative AI has really unleashed a whole new set of possibilities. This past year in particular, it feels like it's the year of new AI, and the possibilities are just incredible. Like, a key part of what seeing AI does is describe what's in an image, and the capabilities we have now is just 10 times better, maybe much better than what we had even 6 or 9 months ago. So that's keeping us really busy. So as we think about Gen AI, it's not only able to in the past we'd have a one sentence describing an image. Now we can go into all the details about, they're these people, this is what they're wearing, this is what's in the background, these are the paintings on the wall, these is what's on the shelf. We can even generate new descriptions based on what someone's interested in. So you might take your first photo and then be interested, okay, what actually was on the shelf? Or tell me more about the painting on the wall. Or, sometimes I like saying, what's through the window? And what we're hearing from our customers is, it's things that you never thought were even there, like the mountains in the backgrounds when you're in Seattle and stuff like that. So I love this moment in time because every day I am amazed by what the technology can do. And, I've been in the technology industry a very long time, and it's so much fun, like a kid in a candy store when you're in these moments and you're like, wow, we made this, but I had no idea it was going to be able to do that.
Cool, yeah. And I want to come to a question that Jen brought up around hallucinations and how it applies to you. But first I'll go to Rob and talk about what are you at a strategic level looking at and Atlassian overall?
Yeah, so we're still relatively early on. So we have kind of pretty traditional plans around how we're building into our platforms, how we're upskilling our teams, putting really accessibility into kind of how the company operates. So the good news is we're already starting to ship improvements in our platforms in our 3 big products, which is Jira, Confluence, and JSM. So that's nice to start to see that. But the interesting thing about, I think for this conversation is, which I spend a lot of time thinking about, is how can we actually use not only AI, but the evolution of technologies to really accelerate the work we're doing there and ultimately provide much better value. And I think what we're seeing, so we're doing, like many companies, we're investing a lot in Gen AI. Oh, by the way, I loved your disclaimer. I am not an official spokesman for the company's AI strategy. I'm a mere employee. But we're using Gen AI to really solve some very interesting problems for our work, our target audience, which is primarily people who are in software, project management, in any roles, tracking information, creating content. So pretty standard, information workers, I guess we used to call them, and engineers and developers. But what's interesting to me when we think about this, our particular community here, is how can we not only use generative AI to change the way people think about creating content, reviewing it, consuming it, but also how can you change the flow of the tasks? Because many of our products are extremely complicated, creating tickets, assigning tickets, changing status, sharing information. It seems like such an incredible moment to think about how could you do that differently? Like, is there a completely different user experience that you could create, not just for our community, but for everyone, to improve the way we use software to complete those tasks in a way that's much more human-centric and focused. So that's what we're really trying to shift and pivot into. At the same time, rapidly trying to build like a enterprise-wide scalable accessibility program. So my brain kind of splits in 2 different pieces every day, and it's like the very tactical, oh my gosh, like we still have to create this policy over here, or we have to implement this tool, deploy it in this team, but then at the same time looking at the new horizon that is moving so quickly.
See, you mentioned, which is, this new technology is enabling you to create completely new kinds of user interfaces, or, there's this arms race almost in the industry of infusing AI into their products, and for the right reasons. But how are you making sure that, all of these new user experiences that are being, built so fast, you have all the pressure to go to market so fast before the competitor, how are you making sure they're all accessible?
Do you want me to take that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the answer is pretty fundamental. If you want to be successful in creating experiences that work for people, especially when people are racing into new areas like this, you have to have the right mindset. If you don't have the right mindset and you don't have that cultural buy-in, and some of the muscles built around how to actually do that, and hold teams to, I was going to say hold them accountable. What I mean by that is teams having a way of knowing, are they actually on the right track? Like, are they actually creating the right outcome? So it's not about us holding them accountable. It's about them being able to measure in some way to know, like, is this actually working? Which in most cases means really rich relationships and ongoing engagement of the community in the project. So I think for us, it's really no different. We are trying to find ways, because we're early, we don't really have well-established mechanisms of including the community in our design and engineering process and being part of that conversation. So it hurts us in this case because we're trying to move very quickly. We don't have some of that infrastructure in place. But ultimately, teams have to have the right mindset. This is not about compliance. It's about creating great experiences that work well for everyone. And I deeply believe in the principles of inclusive design as far as, everything that's, I think people are probably familiar with that, right? Solve for one, extend to many. So I think all of those same principles are what we have to do here. We have to have, because if we forget those and we race into AI and think that AI is going to magically produce a better outcome, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, sure. Jen, how are you looking at, how are you looking to use, are you looking to use AI in your operations to improve AI, accessibility across Visa?
Yeah.
Are you planning to use AI?
Again, we're trying to take a measured approach here and again, thinking through like all of the things that our teams have to balance. It's not just accessibility, there's security and privacy too. And being a regulated industry where teams have to think through and balance all this, we're thinking through AI and like how can it take such a complicated world, like you were saying, Rob, where you've got to think through these compliance and governance and structures and all of these splintered tools that people have to leverage now and bring it into a place where it's not as complex. Our world isn't getting simpler, it's getting more and more complex. So can this be a tool to help us make this easier to navigate and let us lean in where we're really good. We're really good at strategy and discernment and creativity and understanding context. And if this can help me think through, okay, these are multiple ways to make something accessible. Accessibility isn't a singular compliance path. There's a lot of ways to do something. It's a science and an art. So if this can help me do that in a meaningful way for people because I've connected with the communities, I've heard the stories, I understand how to build this because there's multiple ways to do this, and I understand like, oh, if I create a keyboard navigation this way and it can plug into a switch and low vision users and voice dictation users can do this, then I've got a really dynamic thing and I can think about how I'm making it simpler and giving agency to people and to my users rather than just band-aiding on a bunch of fixes to just check the box and make it compliant and get it to pass so I can do my pull request and log out for the day. So that's kind of what we're thinking through and how we make operations and accessibility like fun and something where I'm like, oh my God, I get to really deliver on the meaningful part of this and not just think of this as like a checkbox thing.
Sure, yeah. Coming back to you, Saqib, on the hallucinations question that Jen brought up earlier. Like, what are hallucinations? I understand is like something a lot of people have heard and understand, but you are much deeper into like applying. Sorry about that. My machine just restarted. It wants to have a say in the conversation.
Feels left out.
So,
Maybe we should ask your computer what it thinks of AI.
so maybe it's the AI agent living in there.
It's working.
They're talking about me. So what are some of the big challenges you're trying to solve as you're applying all this AI, Saqib?
So reliability and these hallucinations, they're probably the biggest challenge we face because when we first started playing with some of these new large language models, large vision models, as they're called, you're just blown away by the detail, the richness. And it just feels like you're chatting to a human because the responses are so convincing. But then at some point you remember, actually, this is just a machine. This is just a probabilistic system that is very good at generating text similar to what it's seen before. And when you think like that, you realize that the biggest problem is that they can tell you complete nonsense with 100% convincibility. And so if someone can't see whether something is there or not, it's even more important than ever that we can somehow put the guardrails on and teach the system to only say the thing that it's, got some level of certainty about, to some things we're playing with. So can we get the model to tell us when it's not that sure so we can convey that to the user in the language we use? Or maybe we even make it less capable, because you often see, wow, you can make this inference and pull this information from the internet, and wow, isn't it smart? But I'd rather reliable than smart. So sometimes it's a case of limiting what the system can do just to make it more reliable, hallucinate less. And I had a funny story about this a while back when we were first developing this. I think technology has certainly moved on from this, but we were working. I took a photo just when I was in the car one day, waiting for my wife to come out of the grocery store, and I just took a picture, and it said, "There's a car crash." It's like, huh? Really? I later found out there was actually no car crash. It was just a tree was parked very close to, a car was parked very close to a tree, and it looked like it might have bumped up against it. But based on that, once it sort of went wrong, it started getting more and more wrong. And then, as I said, we can actually have a conversation with the AI and make it generate new answers. So starting in the wrong place, I was like, okay, tell me more about the car crash. And it's like, yeah, the bumper's hanging off. And, and there's a man. It's like, okay, tell me about the man. Yeah, he's got a really concerned look on his face, and he's examining the damage to the car. And I'm like, it just added detail upon detail upon data. And then later on, it's like, there is no car crash. I was like, you're right. I'm sorry about that. So definitely we have a way to go, and things have got better. That was back in the summer, and that just shows how fast things are moving. And yeah, part of the job in my team is leveraging the latest that technology has to offer, but making sure it's done in such a way that it truly helps people and it's not just a gimmick. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, although I don't know if it has moved on. I mean, I was trying to, I was trying to generate like a reminder email for this event, and I went to the Luma page where I have the details for this event, and I asked ChatGPT to sort of create a quick reminder email for me, and it picked up the first 3 attendees, and gave me bios of those 3 attendees as the speakers for this conference. It was all very convincing, as Saqib said. So yeah, we can keep going, but I haven't heard any questions. So feel free. I mean, I can pause if you have any questions. Anything to yes, please.
So it seems like all 3 of you are kind of like in the obviously in the enterprise space from an accessibility perspective. I think Saqib, you're an exception because you're kind of closer to a startup project. But so I was curious about like how you're thinking about like what recommendations would you have for like somebody doing a startup that's thinking about accessibility, where your funding is very limited, so you're trying to like prove out the product, but then you're also needing to think about your accessibility requirements too.
Sure.
Funding's limited, so how do you even navigate that?
Yeah, I'll let you guys. I have a lot of thoughts on that topic, but I'll let who wants to go first?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
It's always hard. That's my summary. No. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's because of the point in time we're in, I will say there are so many more tools and opportunities for startups that I think it gives you, I mean, like in university, I think University of Washington has a free, every Friday they have sessions where they actually, sessions for like entrepreneurs where they actually talk about a different topic. And you can go in and hear from, VC, venture capitalists, or founders, hear about some of the problems they're working on, some of the new things that has different topics. And then there's time for you to ask questions. So one answer is get involved with the local startup community, because there's a really diverse ecosystem here in the Northwest, especially in Seattle. And here Microsoft and Google and Amazon, like the programs they have to, support startups are really fantastic. So that's one answer. The other is, if you're doing accessibility today, you want to do a startup, I would think about what's happening today and in these kinds of conversations around cutting edge technology. There are so many different ways to approach the problem of accessibility that really, to get that funding, what you need is a new angle and something that you think could really have impact. There's a lot more VCs and angel investors who are looking to invest in this space. And so I would just say, put your idea together, go to UW, get some free consulting and support from those staff over there, and then go for it.
Great, yeah. Saqib, do you have any suggestions?
I think it's called Co-Motion. So look up UW Co-Motion. It's there's a Friday talk series, and then that gives you, then you can actually find contacts. But I know Microsoft also has a program around accessibility. What's called Accessibility for Good.
Accessibility for Good, yeah.
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 AI for accessibility.
Yeah.
AI for accessibility. We knew there were a bunch of A's in there. Did y'all have other
Did
answers?
you guys, yeah.
I was going to say, think about what voices might not be in the room that you've not considered, so that you can, especially in the accessibility space, avoid those AI dongles or, techno-ableism that tends to happen where people are, developing the sign language gloves. And it's who's that for? Is it for the people, what's happening when things are quickly developing and people are throwing buckets of money to try to wave a magic wand and fix disability or whatever, because they see dollar signs there and have not tapped into the community or really understood the problem they're trying to solve. So I think that's one thing to also keep in mind, because with the draw of that and headlines and this quick movement, that's going to be something that can easily pull you away from what you're trying to create in the first place.
Sure.
I think to what Jen said, very much that,
Yeah.
like any startup, I'm a fan of the lean methodology, lean startups, where it's all about build the minimal viable product as quickly as possible, and then start validating it. Start with hypotheses about what's going to be helpful, but then keep validating, because that situation of the sign language gloves, that comes about when you sort of develop in isolation in your tower, thinking, I have a great idea, and it's not great until you're helping someone. That's my philosophy. So get the customers involved as soon as possible, and make sure that it's a diverse set of customers, so that, exactly like Manish said right at the beginning, nothing about us without us.
Yeah. And I'll add just two quick things, and part of them were said by Saqib and Rob. One is that, one easy way regardless of whether you're a startup or a mature product, you would give your product to users to use. You'll do some kind of user validation. Make sure you have people with disabilities in that group, right? And you'll find a lot of things right there. But more importantly, what will happen is you'll end up building a more compelling product. Every time teams have tried to make an accessible product, they've ended up building a more compelling product, and I can give a whole day long worth of workshop around that. But as a startup, what you really want to build is a compelling product, right? And so it is not an investment that is just a cost center for you.
Mm-hmm. We've
Yeah,
got, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a hand up in the back of the room, but if you
I
want
was just going to say, you could even think about actually, instead of building an invaluable product, start with building the community of the users, find the real people, and then make sure you have you're solving a real problem. So I love what everybody said here.
Yes.
I had a question here.
Yes.
Then am I or am I going to use my project my voice?
I'll repeat your question.
Oh, that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
This is Kiran. Hi, folks. Maybe a controversial topic.
I can trust
we
you.
have been trying to solve the accessibility problem one way for the last 20 odd years, which is trying to convince web developers, app developers to create accessible content and teach them how to do it. Is it time for us to start looking at solving this accessibility problem, making apps and web content accessible using generative AI?
Sure. I'll repeat the question. The question is, for 20 odd years, we've been doing accessibility same or similar, where we ask the web content developers to make their content accessible. Is it time to change that paradigm and use generative AI to create accessible content?
I
Or
can
even
take,
fix it.
yeah, well, I can take a stab out at that. Like, again, I don't think it's a magic wand to fix everything. I think there's parallels in the fact that machine learning and all of this needs structure, and a lot of our assistive technologies also need structure to parse out information and to help us navigate. So the two of those have parallels, and how can we leverage those parallels to create kind of a new dawn for us around accessibility and how we might approach this differently? So I've been thinking about, like, how might we try to approach that and leverage that, again, the similarities in a new way. But again, without the discernment and understanding, like, let me use myself as an example. I suffer from anxiety and depression, but I mask it with a smile a lot. If AI takes a picture of me and I'm smiling, AI is going to describe me as a smiling woman, glasses, salt and pepper hair. I'm up here presenting to people and I look happy. AI doesn't have the discernment to talk about the context of the experience, why my picture might be used, how it's going to be implemented within a space. So again, where is AI good for these things, and where do we still need the human interactions and what it's good for and what it's not good for within this space? Because again, our human experience isn't this binary structured way to build a product and to experience a product and give us agency to go through things and navigate the world. So I think there's something there, but I don't think it's this fix-all type solution.
Rob, you were starting to say something.
Yeah, so I think that, I'm not the best person at predicting, the future. I think, I don't know long term, but I'll say what I think is the next horizon, which I think is achievable, and it supports everything Jen just said around, the limitations and what we're talking about. Oh, I'll give a really quick example. I was playing with generative AI. This kind of goes to Saqib's example a minute ago. And I was trying to generate a scene of a wildlife photographer in the woods, because I do wildlife photography. So I was just playing with it to see what it could do. And I said, let's add some animals. Let's add like an elk and some eagles, whatever. And I said, let's the eagle flying or something. So it generated an image, this beautiful bear and this beautiful eagle kind of in a bush. It was kind of odd to tell. And then there was this elk with a giant rack flying through the sky. I was like, yeah, not quite right. And so I just think it was such a great reminder of, this illustrates like how AI can create something pretty compelling, but it's not right. So I would say, Kieran, to your question, what I think is the next horizon is, I think there's a lot of opportunity for AI to assist humans in the process of creating, constructing, designing really compelling experiences that are fully inclusive. But I think that is the next step while it matures. But there's a lot of cases where tooling could actually help people write much better code, much more accessible code. They're getting much better at detecting errors, recommending fixes, right? So if you integrate that into the entire product lifecycle, I think you could accelerate the learning curve and reduce the expertise required for the average designer or engineer to get it right. So in that assistive capability of assisting the human, I think there's a ton of potential in the short time horizon. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe someday magically we can have a, you'll define the semantic model, and then the experience is auto-generated on the fly for the person and the situation and the device. Maybe. I'd love that
Windows
if
sign
it
in
worked.
dialog.
But we're a long way from that because people themselves can't really understand. It's difficult for people to understand what other people actually need out of an experience. So getting AI to understand that is a leap beyond. So.
Right, yeah. And talking of who can tell the future, who better than Saqib? Saqib can definitely tell the future.
He's the best guy on the stage for that.
Yeah.
Saqib, what do you want AI to do for you in the future?
I want an assistant for every part of my life, and not just me. I think everyone. So I, as a blind person, want a little virtual friend whispering in my ear, looking around, just accompanying me everywhere. But for someone who's hard of hearing, that's going to be a bit different. For someone who's traveling the world in an unfamiliar culture, or someone with neurodiversity, that's going to be different again. But this idea that, okay, as we're building these supercomputers that can understand the world around us, and if they can understand us as individuals and as humans, then I think it's the job of each of our personal assistants to fill in the gaps between what we are capable of doing and what this environment lets us do. So that's my big vision. I want these AIs to work for us, to fill in that gap between what's around us, what are we capable of, what could we do.
Sure. Same question for you, Jen. What is it that you would want AI to do that will help you, like in your operations?
Yeah.
And what do you want AI to do in the future?
I'm skeptical and optimistic at the same time because I guess I've just been around long enough and thinking through, again, the techno-ableism and who isn't represented in all of these large language models, or thinking through, like, is there something that we're doing now that might be, again, reducing agency for some people, but then again, the power of it, to Saqib's example and thinking through the future of, like, how much could it be a step up for other people? Like, how do we balance that? How do we give people the agency that they need when and where they want it, and make the AI work for us, not against us, and remove agency for people. That word agency and discernment, those are the things I keep repeating when I come here to think about AI and generative AI. So I think for me, like, what would be ideal with these tools is that, I think I alluded to it before, it really helps people understand the myriad of pathways before them. It turns a complex world into something that is more navigable for them. And whether you're navigating the grocery store parking lot or trying to build a product for somebody and understand, like, oh my gosh, what all processes and policies do I have to create? How do I build an accessible, secure, private widget here, that AI could be my assistant in some way, almost like my intern, and it can show me all of these things, it can research for me, it can go out and parse all of this data, because that's what it does well, and it can present to me all of these things, but then I can decide, like, that's not quite right, or maybe it gives me some ideas to brainstorm off of, and I can leverage my time and my energy in ways that help me be better and more mature, and can help the people that I'm trying to serve, whether it's the customers or the engineers or what have you, in a better way. So that's really where I'd like it to go in the operational world of accessibility.
Sure. Rob, your take on the future, like, what is it like when you think of strategic decisions you make at Atlassian, like, where would you want the future to be for AI in accessibility?
I was going to answer a different question, but that's
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I'll answer the other question really fast, because I think for me, like my ideal outcome for AI is to actually neutralize or overcome human bias. And what I mean by that is think of what all the decisions that are made in finance or hiring or applying for a loan or applying for a job or getting an education, or there's so much bias that we as humans bring to all these processes. We're starting to build AI into all these practices and they're amplifying bias.
Yep.
If we could somehow do the opposite and eliminate the bias that we have when choosing like who's the right candidate for a job or who actually is eligible for this housing, or education, or who gets admitted to the program, in an educational system, that would be transformational for the planet.
Yeah.
So I would love to see us actually use AI in that way, but that means we have to create it that way. At Atlassian, I think it's more of what I said a minute ago around, I think for us, because we build tools that people use to run their business and their teams, I would love to actually see us use AI to improve that tooling to enable people to make better, more inclusive decisions in how they build product, how they prioritize work, how they run their teams, and how they build their teams. And the reason I say that is because for me, that ultimately accrues to better representation in the workplace and education for the community that we all care and love about. And so that's what I hope we can achieve at Atlassian.
Sure. Thank you so much. And
A couple of questions in the back.
yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Namrita. My pronouns are she, her. I have a question around metrics, because I know we're talking about AI and we're talking about accessibility. And typically when we've looked at accessibility, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but we tend to measure, what are the accessibility bugs found and how are we reducing those? So taking that metric out of the picture, what are some other metrics you all are thinking about or are already using when it comes to accessibility, but now with the intersection of AI, how is that changing? How are you measuring if AI is even being effective for accessibility, or would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'll repeat the question for the audience. How are we, what are the metrics that we are using to measure if AI is being effective for accessibility? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I'll
Yeah.
take a stab at that. Thinking through, again, flipping the script instead of bugs, but the people on the other end of it. What people are we helping? What questions are we answering instead of bugs we're fixing? Because, again, if accessibility is a line item that can always be struck, and leaders are saying like, oh, great, you fixed all these accessibility issues, we're done, right? We don't need you anymore. Like, you would still need these KPIs in some way, and talking about like who you're serving and how you're maturing your program in those important ways to understand like our using AI has allowed our team to mature and now talk to people more one-on-one instead of going in and fixing bugs all the time. We can have workshops now. We can actually like inform people across the company better and scale our practice better. And instead of like hiring and embedding an SME into every team, our engineers and our designers have better understanding of what they need to do day to day as table stakes. And now they're coming to us with more difficult questions. And I can spread a subject matter expert across 5 or 6, 7, 10 teams meaningfully, not as like a line item to be cut, but meaningfully because they're helping to research and solve difficult problems, helping to bring in user stories, doing user research on this, and not just be like, yep, you need headings, this is why structure is important, don't forget your alt text, those kinds of things that we've said like countless times that AI could probably help us handle on a regular basis.
Sure, yeah. Rob, do you have a take on the metrics?
Pretty much agree. Maybe my summary is, which I think completely reinforces everything you said, was get away from the metrics and the accessibility metrics and just focus on measuring task flow, completion, time for completion, just like we do everyone else. I mean,
make it equitable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is the experience usable? How quickly can it get the task done? Regardless of who, quote, they are. So include people with disabilities in all the studies and research you're doing. We're starting to do that now, which is, I told someone earlier, at Atlassian, we sort of leaped ahead to some implementation. and without building the foundations necessarily. So we're living the agile iterative style. And so we've actually just started doing our first research studies this last quarter. And not surprisingly, like there's some pretty impactful results. So, but I mean, and that's what we're doing. We're measuring like, you know, how effective is the experience of allowing the person to complete the task. So we're trying to get away from, oh, which WCAG criteria does this piece of the UI actually support? And yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you all is it's also like just tied into engineering metrics or inclusivity metrics, right? Like when we're
That's
thinking
it.
about design, heuristic evaluations, all that fun stuff. So
That's right.
getting away from the bugs, which again,
Yeah.
I hate that metric a little bit.
Yeah.
I appreciate your sharing that.
Well, and if you fix the bugs, it doesn't mean the project's usable.
Right.
There were multiple
There
hands.
was, there was another question in the back.
She answered.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Another, okay, over here on the left. Yeah. Yeah.
This is build on kind of everything like we touched upon, the assistant, the product. What if we look at it a kind of a different way and we change the mental model and the AI model? Let's say we have an AI on the client side and that's our personal assistant. Now we have AI on the server side and a neural net, as you would, and they speak to each other. And they limit those types of hallucinations. Like my client side AI, I've trained it, I've trained the model. So it caters to me. Now it can speak to another model that's out there. It can resolve the inconsistencies, which would limit the hallucinations, but it also give me as a human a more equitable experience because now I could train it to exactly what I want. Like it goes everything from me interacting with a space to me interacting with a digital, like or even like let's say alt text. Let's say I'm a visual screen reader user and someone else is a blind screen reader user. We would need different things from alt text. Me also having a cognitive disability, too much alt text would be a cognitive load and wouldn't be catering to me. However, somebody who can't see the physical space and would need something like Be My Eyes to describe what's going on would need something different. But what if the model kind of contacted that neural net, as you would, and would discern the information and kind of be my view, as you would. And it would give me what I need as a human and would resolve a lot of the issues from the technical side, but would also remove the bias at the same time.
Sure.
Because like me, as a human, I'm making biased decisions every moment of my life because I'm a human.
Yeah.
But if I have that client, it can also help you resolve that. So if we can think of that and kind of change that mental model and the AI model where there's that intercommunication, yet I still have that flexibility in use.
Sure.
And I could also discern what I want to use as well. It kind of changed the paradigm a little.
Yeah.
Maybe then, it could help us build more equitable and inclusive experience.
Yeah, and I'll repeat what a summary of that comment / question, and I'll give it to Saqib.
Yes,
I think
good choice.
what if there were server-side models and client-side models that talk to each other, and the client-side ones were specific to you, while the server-side ones were more generic, and they could correct each other and personalize this for my personal use? Is there a future that you see where the AI can correct itself for every person?
Don't let the AIs talk to each other. Then they'll just go and talk to other AIs, and they'll talk to other AIs, and then maybe they'll forget about me. But again,
They could hallucinate together.
but at Microsoft, the word Copilot is going a bit crazy at the moment. Every product is having a Copilot. And this is interesting because I was talking about Copilots 10 years ago as an accessibility thing. And so now I'm going around the company saying, okay, now we have the Copilots that we're talking about. They're not what I imagined, but they will get there. So the Copilot, whether that's in the cloud or on your machine, personalized to you, is this idea that you have, right now, the way they look in, say, Office, M365, is that you have a text box and you can type stuff. And it will go and find the information from your company's data store or your documents or help you write something in a document. But let's think bigger than that. Exactly like what you were saying, that if we now have a co-pilot which helps me complete tasks, that knows about me, on the one hand, I'm excited by this because maybe it helps us get away from this whole need for, not whole need, you're always going to need accessible markup and accessible apps. But if you have another way, if you have a way for AIs to talk to AIs, it's almost like now we're inventing other user interfaces. And now, if right now it's a chatbot with typing and coming back, but now actually you can tell it to present this information in a table, present this information one line at a time, present this information in the way that suits me. So I see the hope, the potential. I don't know if it's going to happen very fast or the way I imagine, but I do hope that by having these co-pilots, one day it will not only get all the information I need without going through the accessibility layer, because everyone will want their apps to be accessible to the AI, but then the AI can also present it to me in the way that I want. So that's very exciting. I think we're going to get there. And yeah, let's see what that journey's like, but I'm excited to be at the beginning of it.
Sure. I think we'll have one or two last questions, and then
I think
we'll
there's
break for.
3 or 4 hands up.
Okay, we'll have all of those.
You said that, and suddenly like 3, 4, 5, 6.
Go for it. Who wants to go?
Okay, I'll go here.
Okay.
So one thing that came to mind is AI is really great in helping with accessibility in the way that it can really customize to individual needs. For example, with a human model, we can kind of categorize a deaf group of people, but that's not the approach that we want to take. We want to take a more individualistic approach, as needs will be different. And so with AI really mapping to what a person needs, it can be problematic in the way that I've personally seen it with data sets, and how data sets typically are very small. So how do you customize to an individual specific need with such limited data sets? What's the strategy moving forward with that? And secondly, despite the mental condition or physical condition of the person, how do we come up with these creative solutions that we've never thought of before? Do you think AI has the capability of seeing ahead and understanding those very unique situations? Thank
Sure.
you.
Who wants to take that?
Well, I have one comment, but I think Saqib is probably going to have much more profound things to say than I do. The size of the language model is interesting because right now I think there's a general expectation that large language models are the right answer. But if you think about that, what you just said, I think, was for a smaller data set, how do we actually make that work? Well, because the data set is representative of a smaller percentage of the population, it may still be exactly the right data set we need. So if you train on that, it might still give the same benefit and output. But in the end, ultimately, I think it's not about the large language model predicting for everyone. I think that's kind of the point that we're making here. So,
Well, and before Saqib blows us away with an
yes,
answer,
exactly the right answer.
I also wanted to say that I am also worried about the voices that are not included in
Yeah.
the model. The voices, like whether it's native languages that aren't spoken or like how languages are spoken. Like a lot of this is built on English and large language models
Yeah.
there, and other languages are constructed differently and convey emotion differently. And what is lost in that? And so again, when we're thinking of these binaries and how these things communicate and spit this back out and predict things, what is lost in that as we start to look to that to answer for us and problem solve and everything like that. So if we hitch our wagons to that too much, what human connections and everything are we losing there? So again, understanding what the tool does, what it's good at, how we can leverage it responsibly, but not turn over everything wholeheartedly. Again, thinking of it as an immature kind of intern that, yep, this can be helpful in certain ways, but I'm not gonna hand over everything and say, just go, you're off to the races. So I still need my decision making, my strategy, my discernment, and brain to make best decisions. All right, blow us away, Saqib.
Explosion. No, I think it's thinking about this. You've got two problems, and the first is that these large language models are learning based on everything that's on the internet. And that's amazing because they know a lot of things. But then, so on the one hand, in theory, that's going to work well because, everyone's and everything is on the internet. And so, it's going to be very inclusive. But the research is showing that because then, as was mentioned, you have these much smaller amount of data for people in certain groups, such as people with disabilities, that's not equally represented because it's considered a smaller amount. So in a sense, this is what happens with society at large, and humans just considering the general majority. So in the same way we have DNI for humans, do we need DNI for the AI? Probably of some sort. So that's sort of the first thing I'm thinking about is how do you get the AI to pay equal attention to things which are important but not as large. But then the other side of this is how do we have these small models which represent individual groups, maybe even created by organizations who represent those groups, and ultimately maybe even by the individual, where each of and every one of us is different. And maybe it's a tiered system where you are an individual, but you identify with some categories and groups, which then still needs all the data of everything in the world because you're human. So, it's an interesting question. I know some of my friends are researching this in labs around the world, and it's an unsolved problem, but a very good question.
Thank you for that question. Who's next?
Back of the room on the left.
Thank you. Yes. So when I hear AI and accessibility, I hear the controversial word overlay in my head.
Going to overlays.
Yes, I'll be the one who says that. So, Saqib, combining some of what you've said with what this gentleman here brought up earlier about alt text length and alt text richness of description, etc. There's a lot of alt text generated by alt overlays that are generated without appropriate context. Do you think contextual generated alt text in these tools or others will happen? If so, when? And what would you say to those who want to rely on this kind of tech without any human oversight? Thank you.
The question for everybody is, will contextual alt text happen with AI? Will it be useful, and will it, did that capture what you?
Well, with something along AI and overlays being ineffective now, do we think it could be effective?
Yeah, could AI-based overlays be ultimately effective while they're ineffective now?
I don't like the sound of overlays, but if we rephrase it slightly to automatic alt text that is aware of the context, yes, that's going to come, absolutely. And that's the first part of what you said. But then you said without human oversight. I think that's going to be as dangerous as it is today in the future, in that it'll work, or purely automated alt text, but automatic alt text which humans review and edit will always be better, I imagine. And the last thing I'll add to this is contextual text is coming, but then on top of that, maybe we'll even end up with different alt text based on your preferences. So I was speaking to someone who said maybe a journalistic organization, they might have a writing style and things they can and can't say or describe in certain ways because that's what they have to put out for everyone. But maybe I don't mind the writing style, or I have preferences as to what information is disclosed to me. And so, aware of the context of the site, the article, but then also of the user.
Rob, you must have been pitched all kinds of overlays for Atlassian products. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah. One quick question. I wanted a question for a follow-up for Saqib. Did you say that humans would not be required to provide the context for the alt text? That it would eventually be able to derive the correct context on its own, or were
Don't
you
know about
saying
correct, but I reckon it will be able to derive context. But as ever, if the human oversight will always make it better.
Okay. Yeah. So that stall did not help at all. No. I know. No, it's true. No, I mean, I think the thing. So my opinion is that I think there's the overlay thing is very complicated. And I think there's two key factors. One is the promises that are being made by many of those companies do not meet what the product can actually deliver, and that is the largest problem we have. Is if the companies were forthright about the limitations of the technology, I don't think overlay would be such a dirty word right now. Because as we're talking about, there are a lot of opportunities to be explored with new technologies, whether it's AI or whatever, to improve the state of accessibility over time. But we have to be honest that is not today. We're not there. You can't put a single line of code on a website and automatically make it accessible and fully compliant with every standard on the planet, which is what many of those companies are claiming. And so, yeah, I think there's a place for, as I mentioned earlier, I think integrating that, using the same AI and technology to inform and push back into the teams, like changes in the design, changes in the coding, changes in what the language, that would be incredibly powerful today, but that's not how they're being presented. So I think the way they're, like I said, I think it's mostly about the claims that are being used to drive revenue and share that are completely misrepresenting what the technology is capable of in 2023.
Sure. Jan, do you have a quick one before we go to the next question?
I'm a hard pass on
Okay.
overlays. So I do not like them. You'll see my name on a list of no overlays, and I don't. People have the assistive technology that they need and they prefer. They're not going to go into a site and be like, oh, let me try out this screen reader. Let me see what this low vision thing dongle has for me. Absolutely not. So to me, it's no different than walking up to somebody and pushing their wheelchair where you think they need to go. It's hard pass. I don't think it's a useful way to try to, I think it's another way in which people are trying again to wave that magic wand and find a fix because they feel sorry for or sympathy for people instead of giving agency to people and letting them navigate the web in which they prefer to navigate. So
Sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, it's a case where people who don't understand disability see the widgets and they go, oh, cool, I can change the color. Oh, cool, I can make it speak. I literally turned one on this week.
Yeah.
Just to see how far they had come, because they reached out and assured me that it had improved. I could tab their screen reader, only went to focusable links and buttons on the page. No content, there was no control. So yeah, I actually wrote out a policy at Atlassian, no overlays.
Yeah, and I think it gives
So-
people that
Short
don't
one.
know a warm fuzzy, oh, look, this company cares. And it's just no, this company was sold a bill of goods. So
Great.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure my comments really didn't convey that I was supporting them. No. We have a hard policy of no.
Great. Who's next?
another question here in the middle.
Yes.
So I am wondering, how do you see AI impacting the future of accessibility when it comes to design, websites, and social media? I am primarily the deaf, silent, and well deaf communities, and those with other disabilities as a content marketing manager and graphic designer. So I'm hoping to integrate more of that into my work. I'm trying to see how it affects the future when it comes to accessibility plus AI. How do you see that happening?
Can you help me repeat that question, Rob?
So yes, I think we all can. Did you? I think I got the essence of it. But
It's around how AI and design and accessibility and the future of it are going to impact social media and
I can sign
and
it.
she's,
okay.
she's a content designer as well,
Yeah,
so it's
a
how
content
creation of
designer, okay.
content.
Yeah, if you can sign it, we'll
Yeah.
have someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
translate.
can do
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
how do you all see AI impact the future of accessibility when it comes to design, websites, marketing, and social media?
Okay.
I work primarily as a deaf oral signing, with the deaf oral signing community,
Oh, I misunderstood that.
and a content marketing manager, and as a designer. So how do you see the future of AI integrating with accessibility and how it impacts all kinds of people with disability in relation to social media, website design, and graphic design, and that kind of thing? I was just wondering your opinions on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for signing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Thank
that
you
helped.
for
Yeah.
adding the context. I don't know that like there's going to be some wild breakthroughs or anything like that. I do think it's going to help, again, like give us a stair step up to make some things better, to make some things easier given the massive amounts of content created by people that don't know how to create accessible content on social media, in your agencies and stuff like that, because we're all in internal enterprises that can hire accessibility experts to create things. But how do you do this when you've got the masses creating content just left and right? So I think AI could help raise the floor where in some cases is something better than nothing. Is auto-generated captions and auto-generated alt text give you a foot in the door even though it's not great? I can't answer that question. For some people it's yes, for some people it's hell no. And it depends on the person. But with AI getting more mature and better, I think it can help and improve things. I don't know like what other folks.
Yeah, I think, so my take is, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
And I say that because right now, we're already seeing so many cases where people are using AI to write articles and they're publishing them.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a piece, I think it was in the New York Times, this was when ChatGPT 3 launched. An editor did a study, they gave it their profile, and they said, hey, write a bio, that summarizes like this person's experience. And so it picked up the fact that they wrote 5 articles and they had like received 3 awards and whatever. But then it actually, when it cited what awards they had actually received, they were the wrong 3 awards. And when it cited the 5 articles, they were 5 actual articles, but they weren't 5 articles that person wrote. And she gave them the information. So the problem is, Saqib said this earlier, I think it was Saqib, that you have to have someone who actually knows whether what's being produced is actually accurate. So you have to have some discernment to know whether it's accurate. And right now, I'm hearing so many stories and seeing things about people are generating images and stories and posts and resumes. I was in a meeting I was actually at an event, a conference a couple of weeks ago, and someone just at the coffee shop was talking about, oh yeah, I had to create a new operations plan for work. So I went to ChatGPT and said, hey, create an operations plan for whatever their role was. I think it was like energy plant or something. And they said, wow, it was really amazing. So I just copied and pasted it into the document, changed like some of the organizational, the feature, the team names, and sent it to my boss. And they said, wow, this is the best writing you've done. I mean, that's terrifying to me. So I think the problem is it is so easy for someone to use it to generate something that looks good, and it can be completely crap or wrong. And so I think it creates a responsibility for people to be honest about like the responsibility they have when they're producing work to create something that's accurate. And I think the problem we've seen is what is fact is hard. Confusion now of whether things online are accurate or not. And as we heard, the models are all based on that data set of things that are false and true. And so I think until we solve those problems of how do you curate the content and know that what AI is creating is accurate and inclusive and respectful and unbiased. That's why I say I think it's going to get worse before we start to figure out how to make it better. And then once we get better, once it gets to that point of being able to control it a bit more, it's incredibly powerful. I think it does really help people. There's a writer I know who uses it to get unblocked. So they're trying to start a new chapter and say, look, I'm trying to like talk about when Jenny she's going to the lake and whatever, write me a first page. And they said it completely unblocks them. And then they start writing again. And so it's incredibly powerful for people with all different kinds of work styles and cognitive processing and thought processes and creative processes. That there's incredible opportunity, but it's a pro and a con.
Yeah.
Sorry for the long answer. ChatGPT should have summarized that.
Everybody's doing that on their phone.
I know.
They just didn't know.
Please summarize.
Saqib, one last
Yeah.
one on this one.
Yeah, I agree with what Rob and Jen said. Maybe a note of optimism. I can see that it could get worse before it gets better, but Microsoft has this product called GitHub Copilot. It will help you write code, and it's really good because it's learned from all the code on GitHub. But now, is that accessible website tonight? It will generate you a website. And so, okay, the getting worse part is we don't know if it's going to generate you an accessible website, but the note of optimism is if at that moment someone says, make me a website that XXXX, could we just make it so that that's always accessible? I don't know. Could that just solve so many problems in the sort of medium term?
It does that. I mean, I have generated like a small web page with it, and it did all the.
Was it accessible?
Yeah.
Okay, you see, my hunch would be that it'll just copy whatever's out there, and not everything out there is awesome. But that's good.
Yeah.
There's
That
a
is good.
question on the left.
So I have a question that's kind of heavy, so take it with, caution. What do you guys envision as far as safeguards comes when it comes to quantum computing and AI and the security preventions and what you need to get in place?
So the question is, what do we consider as safeguards when it comes to quantum computing and AI, and what are?
That kind of starts to evolve and join forces.
Yeah, and as it starts to evolve and join forces. And so AI is basically on steroids on quantum computing, and what happens then? Anybody?
I think companies having, regardless of what governmental oversight might look like throughout the world, having those practices in place around governance and transparency and accountability and ethics with trained people in their organization, where accountability outside of who builds it, and those people that have the accountability arm also understand it, is crucial to making sure that those things, it's an ecosystem that is in place to support that. Because again, it's all that balance around discernment and agency in the users and making sure that things are deployed and supported throughout as this stuff gets faster. Because as it gets faster, the threats also get faster.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that it's exactly what Jen said, that it's all that framework for, responsible AI, et cetera, that we need to put in place, and hopefully that will persist and irrelevant of the speed, right? Quantum, I think, just accelerates, but I don't know that much about current state of quantum, but I don't believe it changes the risk. I think it just accelerates it. And so I think it's exactly what Jen said. Do you know, though? Saqib, do you? Feel free to say, no, Rob doesn't get it. It's
No, I completely agree. Like, I'm just glad that, the governments are looking at this, but of course, that's going to take time. There we have the responsible AI practices at Microsoft, which we put everything through. And I'm just glad that there are so many people looking at AI for good, because there are definitely people out there looking at AI for bad. So I'm like, it's an arms race. As long as there's more good than bad, we'll be fine.
Great. I think we're running over time, so if you have more questions, I'm sure you do. We still are here, but I'll let people decide like it'll be okay to just keep talking, and we can get up and move around and talk in groups and just give people time to network that way. If you really have a burning question that you want to be answered, we can take one last question and then we'll break.
We do have one last question.
Do you think like product designers have an obligation to like reveal like the confidence level of an answer?
Do organizations have?
I've noticed that a lot of production implementations, they do not reveal that information. Do you think maybe we should?
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Do organizations have the responsibility to reveal the confidence level?
Yeah, product designers, like the front end production implementations of these algorithms, do you think we have the obligation to reveal to the user what the confidence levels are of any answer?
Okay.
So I'll go first. I mean, I did this, I think it's considered second gen AI, which was in the mid 90s is when I started doing AI. And that was exactly the premise. Like you always had a confidence score so that you knew, the person receiving that knew. So I've been actually surprised that seems to have disappeared from the model. Then again, I don't know in the reality of like how it's being integrated into experiences. I also don't know how you would possibly do that in a way that the person could understand, because if it's being used to generate, if we think about like all the different places it's being integrated in, it may get very complicated to do it. Now, today in the case where if it's constrained to, one flow and you're having a chat or it's like generating content for you, that's much easier for it because it could easily surface that. But I don't know, I'm just, personally, I actually am surprised that has been gone because, from my roots in it, I always wanted to know what's your level of confidence. So, I don't know. What do y'all think?
I think it would reduce people's fears about this AI is going to take over the world and kill us all if we had more transparency in the interaction of it for us, and we could start to understand this really is almost like a tool, like a search engine kind of interacts, and we're just kind of like, oh, okay, I can use this to get my job done more efficiently. But Saqib, you actually build this and do this day to day.
Unless it gave you a 100% confidence score that it was about to terminate you, then you would probably not have. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, a little levity.
Yeah, anyone building AI systems, ideally, the AI would, I think it's important to tell people that it's AI generated. I think wherever possible, say that, this could be wrong. And right now in this wave, we don't have confidence in the sort of mathematical way we previously did, but I know a lot of people are working on that, and I'll probably find ways to convey that confidence again. But I think the bigger picture things is we should make sure that people know that they're using AI generated output and things like that as a product designer.
Sure, yeah.
That's a good point.
Great. All right, thank you to the three of you. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah. And we're still here, and there is still food in the kitchen. So please feel free to be here and talk to people and talk to our panelists as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having
me.
Thank you,
everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And go download Seeing AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.